Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show. I'm really happy to have with us Gabriel Perez. Welcome to the show, Gabe.
Hey,
Or
Zane, thank you for having me.
do you go by Gabe or you go by Gabriel primarily?
Well, outside of the office of Gabe, everybody calls me Gabe, but for professionally, I use my full name Gabriel just because it's easier to distinguish. And there's another lawyer in Corpus Christi who goes by Gabe Perez, or Gabe Perez. So I my full name professionally, but outside the office, everybody calls me Gabe.
Okay, well, I'll just call you Gabriel so we can keep that straight. So today's guest, he grew up in Coronado, California, ran collegiate cross country at UTEP, uh, University of Texas, El Paso, earned an MBA and a law degree, and then argued a case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And that's something only a handful of attorneys ever get to do. Gabriel Perez now runs his own firm on the Texas New Mexico border, handling everything from federal criminal defense to personal injury. And he has a personal connection to that work, and we'll get into that. So, you've been inside the U.S. Supreme Court arguing a case about a cross border shooting between El Paso and Juarez. Take us back to the moment you realized this case was going all the way to the Supreme Court, and what was this about? What were you arguing?
So I was the firm I was at before. We had represented the Border Patrol agents who were involved in this shooting. One of them, Agent Mesa, was sort of involved in this altercation with some individuals who had crossed the border, and he was getting assaulted. And so he used his service revolver because he was getting hit with rocks, and he shot across the border, at least into the dark. This happened, around midnight,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the bullets just happened to hit a young man who was, I believe, 16 at the time, and he died. It was, one of those shots that our client regretted obviously taking, but felt he had no other choice but to try to scare off. And he wasn't aiming at anybody; he was just trying to stop the pelting of the rocks. And unfortunately, he hit this young man who died. And so that was the issue. The family of the decedent of the teenager filed a lawsuit here in the federal court in El Paso against the Border Patrol and the agents, et cetera, the government of the United States. And myself and my partner at the time, we represented the agent. And on the civil side, the criminally, he was exonerated. There were no criminal charges brought against this agent, but the family hired an attorney out of Houston. They sued the government and the agent, and we defended the case. And we filed, pre-trial motions at the trial court level here in El Paso in the Western District, and got the motion for summary judgment granted. Then it went up on appeal to the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans, and we lost the first time on appeal. But then we asked for a rehearing. We won the second time, and then that's when the family appealed to the Supreme Court, and we went all the way up. And actually, we went twice on the case because they sent it back to New Orleans for a re-argument, and then we went back. And so I was the brief writer on the case, but I got to sit there, in front of all the justices the second time around, in front of them, and just eye to eye with Justice Ginsburg and Sotomayor and everybody else there on the bench. So it was quite the experience.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, it's a rare occasion. I mean, how many cases go to the Supreme Court every year?
Oh, that number I don't want to mess up. Not very few. Obviously, the process to
Yeah.
get heard by the Supreme Court, first of all, you have to have certain criteria, a federal question, a circuit split, some issue that involves uh, cases that are going to touch and affect the jurisprudence across the country, not just in El Paso. And that's what this issue was for us. It was involved border security and a Bivens claim that could potentially invade the province of law enforcement and federal law enforcement along the border. So the Supreme Court felt it necessary to opine and to weigh in on the case, which they did. But it's tough. Only a handful of cases get heard annually in the two different sessions between the Supreme Courts, each typically the spring and the fall sessions.
So how did it get? What was the basis for it getting remanded back down to New Orleans? The when that happened.
So what happened the first time we went up, in between there was a new case that came out, and off the top of my head I can't remember the name of the case, but it also dealt with qualified immunity and a Bivens claim against federal agents. And so I think it was the Abbasi case, if I'm not mistaken. And so the Supreme Court, since we had not addressed the arguments and the issues presented in the Abbasi case, the Supreme Court said, okay, before we come in and enter a ruling in this case, the Mesa v. Hernandez case, we want you to go back to New Orleans, to the Fifth Circuit, readdress some of the issues brought up in Abbasi, based off of what the Fifth Circuit does under that guidance, then either come back or not. And so obviously we went back and the Fifth Circuit affirmed, and they entered a memorandum of opinion affirming what they had originally ruled en banc the first time around. And so we went back up to the Supreme Court a second time and argued again. And then a few months later got the decision in our favor.
Okay, that's interesting. So, that wasn't even on my list here to get the kind of in depth, but I'm curious, so satisfy myself. So you grew up in Coronado, California. You ended up practicing law on the Texas-Mexico border, and what pulled you back to El Paso?
Family. My son's from here, and and my family, and I met my former partner here in El Paso. Obviously, like a lot of people do, in school and work. And before I went to law school, I worked at the University of Texas at El Paso. After I got my MBA, I was a lecturer at UTEP, and you know. Obviously things happen, and yeah, my son was still here in El Paso. So after graduating from law school, I came back to El Paso. I was given a job offer, and I accepted it because I, come back to my family and see everybody here and work, and things went well for a long time.
So quite a culture difference between Coronado and El Paso. But you said your father's from El Paso.
Correct. Well, both my mom and my dad. My mom was originally from New Mexico. My father is of Mexican descent. He is a U.S. citizen now, obviously, but my dad grew up in the area. He was military. That's kind of what took us to California. My dad was in the Navy. Went to Vietnam, great veteran, and retired from the Navy after 20 plus years of service. And so that's what took us away from El Paso. When I was born here, but then literally like a year later we left. So we lived a lot of our lives. My life, because I have two sisters. I say lives, but my life I spent, oh geez, on the East Coast for a few years. We actually lived in Sicily for a couple of years. That's where my middle sister was born, and then the majority of my life for the last like 10 to 12 years in Coronado.
So you got this degree at El Paso. What was your undergraduate degree in?
I have two majors at the undergraduate level. I have a marketing and a management undergrad bachelor's degree.
So was law always in the cards for you, or did that kind of happen as a result of something?
Well, it kind of was. When I went to UTEP to undergrad, well, first my mind was on running because I was a runner and I thought I was going to be a next grade Olympian, which was probably a little delusional on my part. But I liked the idea of being a business attorney, and so I thought if I go get my business degree, eventually I may want to go to law school. And halfway through my collegiate career, I realized I enjoy business more. So that's why I proceeded to get an MBA and worked a little bit in different offices, and then ultimately was a lecturer at UTEP. I enjoyed the teaching, but I kind of had that calling. I wanted to go back to school and either wanted to become a full professor or go back and get my law degree. And so the in talking with some of the professors at UTEP at the College of Business, I realized I just needed to go back to law school and follow my original gut.
So the one thing that one observation that I just a separate observation, a lot of people don't realize that a majority of the border patrol is actually Hispanic. That there's some sort of a misnomer about border patrol having some ethnic or having some prejudice to them, but the majority of the border patrol, which is kind of interesting. I don't know why I wanted to bring that up, because I was looking at my list here and it says Hernandez v. Mesa, which was that case that went to the Supreme Court. So you were defending the federal agent in that case. What's it like representing someone in that kind of situation where it's so politically charged?
Oh, absolutely. In that case, and I've got another case very similar ongoing right now. I don't want to discuss too much because it's open, but
Hmm.
there's very few individuals, myself, there's another attorney I work with closely, Mr. Lopez, Luis Lopez. He and I do a lot of this type of Bivens defense and agent defense in the area because of the experience. So we get called on these cases. But in this case, the Agent Mesa case, it was difficult. We did get a lot of I don't want to say threats, but there were a few threats. People would call and ask us, how can you defend somebody who did this? And I get it. It's a very emotional situation. You have a young man who was killed really through an accident. They were assaulting the agents, but the shot was an accident. It was just more of a threat, and that's what made it really
Mm.
hard to I think to swallow for a lot of people. But we did receive a lot of threats at the office. We get people calling and threatening. So we had to be on guard a little bit. But it's the way I look at it, the way Lewis looked at it a lot was, this is our job, and we're getting paid by the government to help these agents who are either in a difficult situation, and especially in these days, now that we look at what's happening with ICE and a lot of other entities in the United States currently. Back then it was a different atmosphere, definitely. The Border
Hmm.
Patrol wasn't as, I don't want to say villainized as it is today, but Border Patrol still has that negative connotation. Oh, it's the Border Patrol. It's this, it's that. But a lot of the agents are just great citizens, people who are trying to protect the borders, do a job. They're federal employees, and it offers a great career. And I think here along the border and a lot of places in the United States, when you have the chance to become a federal agent, get great benefits, retirement, insurance, job security for the most part, and you earn a decent salary to where you can raise a family, it's a no-brainer for a lot of people. So it's just a career choice for those who believe in the rule of law and law enforcement to some extent. In that
I don't
capacity, we
know.
just looked at it.
I honestly don't understand but I mean, I don't even understand why it's a political issue, but it is. So you went from associate to name partner at Ortega Maglashan. So that's a strange couple of surnames. You've got your Scottish Latino group there. So you launched your own firm. What made you decide to go solo?
Oh, a couple of different factors. A lot of it was just, I think a lot of attorneys get to the point where professionally they feel it's time for me to move either in a different direction, or for myself, I want a little more autonomy in the cases I could take and wanted to work on. When you're part of a firm, even as a partner, there's certain pressure. And I wasn't the senior partner, obviously my name wasn't first. So we kind of took cases on sometimes that I didn't want to take, or I felt, well, I really want to move in a different direction, or I want to do more pro bono work, etc. And so, ultimately, you still have to report to your partners, and there's some accountability to that. At some point, I just realized, a few years back now, I think it's time for me to just spread my wings, move on, and either I'm going to sink or I'm going to swim, and we'll find out.
How long ago was that?
This was in 2021, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So you're still kind of fresh. Well, no, that's like 5 years ago. So kind of getting your feet underneath you now at this point. So how many do you have other associates in your firm, or is it just you and the staff?
Right now, as far as official employees, it's myself and the staff. I have a full-time staff of well, almost four paralegals, but myself. I do have a couple of contract associates that I pay sort of like on a contract basis whenever I need help for certain cases for trial or to cover hearings. I have a couple of attorneys who help me out, some young attorneys who are also kind of like me, but just a lot younger. They're barely get out of law school, so I'll give them a case or two to work on with me, and I'll pay them by the case or by the hour. So just to kind of keep the overhead low at this point, because it's that's the thing as a business owner. The business owner side of a law firm is you have to watch your overhead and expenses, to make sure you can be survive in the long term. A lot of my colleagues, unfortunately, it's difficult to make a living in the practice of law. They're great writers, great lawyers, fantastic trial attorneys, but when it comes to overhead and costs, especially these days, things just keep skyrocketing. So it's important to kind of look at both sides of practice, not only the legal side, but the business side.
Yeah, a lot of people don't appreciate the fact that, especially when you're, a loan practice, not a, big law firm, that you're running a business, you're wearing all these hats, you're doing all these different kinds of things. Yeah. So you've let's see, flip back to my questions. So your firm covers personal injury, federal criminal defense, civil litigation across 2 states. Walk me through what that's quite a variety. Walk me through what a typical day looks like. I'm sure there's no such thing, but
Yeah, a typical day is there isn't, you're right, no typical day. Today, for example, today's what, Tuesday. I had 3 hearings this morning before lunch, and then I had a consultation at 2 o'clock Mountain Standard my time, and then I've got another appointment right after this later on before I go home. Tomorrow, I have oh anything from a docket call on a pending trial, which is in New Mexico, Las Cruces, New Mexico. Actually, I'll be in a jury trial next week, again on a defamation claim, and then that's tomorrow morning. Tomorrow afternoon, a couple consultations, as well as I think I have another scheduling conference in the afternoon. So it's all over the place, and luckily I have a great staff who keeps my calendar straight and will tell me where I need to be and make sure things are ready to go each day.
so you're practicing in Texas, New Mexico. That means you have 2 bar licenses, 2 court systems. What does that give to your clients that a single state attorney can't do?
And I here on the border, that's the critical part. We're right on the Texas, New Mexico, and Mexico border for that matter.
Hmm.
And so I have a few business clients who have offices in Las Cruces and El Paso, and some in Alamogordo, to where I can cover any issue that arises in this area of practice for them. I'll travel the state of Texas or New Mexico, and the it does offer some of my business clients, civil clients, the ability to have one attorney versus having two firms represent them, because if it's anything from Houston to Santa Fe, I can take care of it for them.
So as your business has evolved, where would you like to see it go? I mean, as far as a specialty, or do you just think that you kind of like the variety of all the different types of cases? So you said you got the MBA so that you could kind of specialize in, or you thought, of course, you were probably a younger man back then. Where do you sit? Where would you like your firm to go from where it is right now?
I think we're on the right path. Historically, I keep the federal criminal along with the personal injury and the plaintiff work there, because when you do injury and civil rights and sort of the plaintiff side, you don't go to trial a whole heck of a lot. And that's unfortunate, which is good and bad. It's great because normally we can get a resolution at mediation or some sort of arbitration for our clients and make sure they're compensated rightfully. But at the same time, if a case settles at mediation, you're not going to be picking a jury the next month. So I'll keep the federal criminal, just so that way I can still go to a jury trial at least 4, 5, 6 times a year at a minimum. Because jury trials are like athletics and like running or like any sport. If you don't do it on a regular basis, you lose that skill. You lose practice, and so you get rusty. And the federal criminal affords me the ability to keep. Okay, because it's a unique set of skills to stand in front of 100 people and tell them, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gabriel Perez. I'm here representing this person. I want to ask you some questions. Where'd you go to high school? Are you married? What do you think about police? What do you think about insurance company? These questions you're asking a room full of people. If you don't do it on a regular basis, the first time you do it again, you're going to stand up there sweating, nervous, forgetting what you're trying to ask and get across to this pool of jurors. So uh, I'll probably keep the criminal to some extent, even maybe 5 or 10% of my practice, solely for that purpose. But my drive is to represent more of the injured individuals, whether it's through auto accidents and 18-wheel accidents. We have a fair number of those cases, but a lot of cycling accidents and some involved in athletics, because that's what happened to me personally. Was I was injured by a driver who ran me down when I was on my bike.
Funny, my son had the exact same thing happen. So, what is that? Does that give you any additional insight? Having been involved in that kind of an accident yourself?
I think so. I have a lot of clients who do contact me because they know that I used to ride a bike a lot. I still ride on the weekends when I can and here and there. but they know that when they talk to me about their pain, suffering, injury, what it's like not to be able to ride their bike or work out, that I'll understand, I'll be able to sympathize with them. Whereas somebody who doesn't have that background will listen to them, oh, I understand that, I'm sorry, but not truly understand what it's like not to be able to get on your bike or go run for weeks on end, and what that does for their mental health, things like that. Because for a lot of my clients who are runners, cyclists who are injured, or other athletes, not being able to do what you love for months, weeks on end really affects you mentally.
Right. So I'm going to switch this up. I'm going to go for some rapid fire. I always like to do this kind of in the middle here. Uh, Favorite thing about El Paso that else outsiders don't know? We know about the food, so you can't
Yeah,
say that.
yeah, exactly. The outsiders don't know. I would say how nice the people really are.
Okay,
El Paso, the folks in El Paso and citizens, they grow up with this mentality of like, hey, you know what? If you see somebody's with a flat tire on the side of the road, they're going to stop to help you out.
that's nice. So courtroom habit you'd never give up.
Oh, this is going to sound bad, but I try not to change my socks throughout the trial.
So I've asked that a number of times, and I have gotten some unusual things. So that just I understand. So best advice a professor at Texas Tech gave you.
There was Professor Richard Rosen. He taught constitutional law at Texas Tech when I was there. He told us to don't take a case because of the fee or the potential reward, but take a case because how it makes you feel as a person.
Okay. That's a tough thing for an attorney to do. You can't. It's really hard to just choose on that basis. But it's a great thought. So, case you lost that taught you the most.
Taught me the most. That's a very good question. I would have to say just well, within the last few months, I had a federal jury trial that we went on a premises case. It was a premises liability case involving an alleged defect at a restaurant, and we lost. The motion to dismiss was granted. During the middle of trial, it was a directed verdict, but I think that one probably taught me the most as far as just I think being able to evaluate a case from a third party perspective. I think a lot of us attorneys get lost in seeing the case from our client's eyes solely, and we thought we're going to trial. There's no way. Well, there's still a chance we could lose, but I think we're going to do well. And but it's easy to overlook deficiencies in the case when you're so and just wrapped up and involved with it from your client's perspective.
The righteousness. Yeah, I can see how that could happen. So, if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be doing?
Well, if I wasn't a lawyer, I'd probably be a greeter at Walmart right now. Something very low stress, smiling, relaxing throughout the day. But no, I think if I wasn't working as an attorney right now, I probably would still be teaching at some capacity at the university level. I taught at UTEP, like I stated, and then I also, after graduating and coming back from Lubbock, I taught at the El Paso Community College. I taught criminal law at EPCC for a couple years.
Um, Morning routine on trial days.
So I get up extra early. I go for a run, and I always have the same thing. I have I always forget the brand. Chobani yogurt, yogurt with blueberries, granola every single morning in trial, so it's light on my stomach. And I try to get to the courthouse at least half an hour early.
And so you've tried dozens of civil jury trials. You've taken them to verdict. What separates a case that you'll take to trial from one that you'll be more likely to settle?
The biggest factor for us probably is what there is being our client's view of do they think this is fair, and our view as well. Obviously, we look at a case, we try to evaluate a case numerically if it's an injury case, and we look at what the damages are, what the medical expenses are, what the bills are, and what our client can potentially recover. And if it gets to the point where the offer at mediation is just not going to cover the medical expenses, not going to put anything in our client's pocket, at that point to us it's a no-brainer. We have nothing to lose, and
Right.
so we go to trial on that case. But if it's close to where maybe our client will walk away with some money in their pocket, we cover all their bills. In that case, it's closer. Most of the cases do settle, like I was talking about earlier, to where we're able to reduce their medical expenses and get our client a decent recovery to make it worth their time for what they went through, for the pain, suffering, the inconvenience. But so we have some insurance companies will say, we're going to offer you a nominal fee, $1,000, $2,000. In that case, we tell them, saddle up. We're going to go to trial. We'll let a jury decide.
So it's so you handle everything from DWIs to capital felonies. How do you prepare differently for a federal case versus a state case?
Well, it's funny. I haven't tried. Well, tried one last year. I don't do a lot of state work anymore. Like I said, a lot of federal stuff, but the preparation is different. On the state side, unless it's maybe a capital murder case, I was involved in one of those several years ago with once my co-counsel, Mr. Lopez, Mr. Benjamin, and Mr. Morales. For a brief period of time, but unless it's a capital murder case on the state side, I'll typically have an investigator who will help me go through the timeline, go through some of the evidence and discovery. We'll meet with a client. We'll prepare maybe about 2 to 3 months before trial to make sure we don't have to bring anybody else in, witnesses wise or experts. On the federal side, it starts from day one. On the federal cases, like the one I'm involved in right now with an accident with an agent in New Mexico, another federal agent. From the day he was indicted until today, which has only been really like about a month and a half, we've already hired experts. We have some witness interviews going on. Motion practice started because the federal criminal justice system is so much more elaborate, so much more intricate that, once the FBI or DEA indicts you, they provide the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for indictment. It's as close to airtight as you can get. Whereas on the state side, sometimes there's a little bit of wiggle room where you can try to, negotiate or find a crack in their case. But with the feds, it's very difficult.
So how do you decide? So you've been on both sides, on both as a from the defense standpoint and from the other side. What makes you pick one versus the other, or is it just according to how things how things come to you?
So typically, yeah, whoever calls us, that's how it works. The um, we we get calls for consultations daily. And so when we talk to people, it just depends. It just depends on the case. Sometimes I'll decline cases. I'll tell them, I can't help you if I don't think I'm the best fit for it, or if I don't, perhaps I'm too busy. Sometimes, I'll try to pass them on to a colleague or bring somebody else on to help. I don't like to say no because if somebody sought me out purposefully to ask me to help them out, I don't want to say sorry, I can't help you. But I'm always upfront with my clients and tell them, look, I've got a jury trial next week. I've got one the week after. But if you want to hire us, I can bring on co-counsel and they can kind of take the lead. And if it goes to trial down the road, I'll definitely be there. But for now, I'm going to have somebody else kind of run point on the case. And a lot of clients are okay with that because they take comfort, or they've been given my name from a relative or a friend. Oh, Gabe helped him out, help me out. Talk to him. So it just depends. It's a case by case basis as to what we take.
So you taught criminal law and statistics at El Paso Community College for 7 years. What did teaching give you that practicing law doesn't?
Teaching, I've always enjoyed teaching at the college level. I think it's kind of giving back to the community, sharing with, presumably the knowledge that I've accumulated and what I have. But I like to see young kids and the younger generation who's in training to take our place, because eventually we're all going to be gone, and it's going to be our kids and their kids who are going to hopefully carry the mantle of what we're establishing and doing here. And I think education is the best way to accomplish that. I obviously it's oxymoronic to say this, but I mean, I wouldn't be here without education, obviously. But I was the first person in either of my families, mother or father's side, to go to college, let alone to go to law school. And so, I'm not I do appreciate the fact that of what that means to the legacy of my family, my kids, my son who's now about to graduate. He's a senior at UTEP as well, business major, and he's potentially going to go to law school. So I see it in him. But education I think is the great equalizer for society and for minorities like myself and other people, women, Hispanic, African Americans, whomever it might be, people who are maybe less fortunate than we are. I didn't grow up all that wealthy. With my parents struggled like a lot of parents did, and but with education and paying for it and going through and studying, and I'm very blessed these days, and I'm glad that I did go to school. So I try to give that back to these students. Say, look, if I did it, I'm no different from any of you sitting out here. You guys can do it as well.
Well, I have another client who he talks very affectionately about the ability to. He has is a successful law practice, and he's was just thrilled that his son has come to work alongside him. He was scared at first, though, that he was going to be, maybe too much in his soup, but he found out that he ended up that's not the way that it worked. He actually was able to, and they built a good relationship working together. Anyway, just on that side note about your son, so you served on the El Paso Bar Association board. What's the biggest challenge facing attorneys in border communities right now?
I would say the biggest issue for attorneys is a lot, at least here locally in El Paso and Las Cruces. The biggest issue is, I think, the the intersection of mental health issues when they conflict with law enforcement and the citizens that in these areas. It's a popular topic. It's an emerging topic, but I think a lot of times when we have interaction with law enforcement and individuals who are suffering from some sort of mental health affliction, it ultimately leads to a bad result, and we see a lot of that lately. And a lot of it here on the border stems from there's this historically men don't like to go to doctors. I mean, I'll tell I'm one of them. As a Hispanic male, I was always taught, suck it up. You're nothing's wrong with you. Just put a smile on and go to work. Go do this. Do whatever. And we see. I think that it's changing. Thank goodness. But I think a lot of the citizens here along the border, the men especially, grow up that way, and maybe they do have an affliction that they don't have diagnosed or take medication or help for. And when they're placed into this situation with law enforcement, it kind of rears its ugly head, and we have a lot of issues with that. So I think along the border we do see a lot of that tension between a trying to find ways to address mental health needs and the citizens before they just end up in jail.
So if somebody's listening to this and they say, I'm in the El Paso area or in that area, how do I get in touch with Gabriel? That sounds terrific. I need some help. What's the best way to
Well,
get in touch with you?
best way is to give us a call. Our website also has my email, my personal emails on the website, Gabriel S. PerezLaw.com. Or you can call us on our number. It's 915-444-5351. My staff is on call from 8 to 5 every day, and we're here on the weekends too. But we'll get back to you within a few hours if we're on the phone. Usually we'll answer the phone right away. We have call service even at night. But yeah, give us a call and we can schedule for an appointment or answer a question, see if we can help you out.
Okay, Gabe, thanks a lot for coming on.